Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Eric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
This episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess is sponsored by the children's book Feathers Matter. As our kids grow up, they face challenges in their life, and knowing their self-worth and their value is crucial to face the headwinds. Purchase this beautiful story to read to your kids and grandkids and start the conversation with them at a young age. They are worthy, they matter, and their feathers matter. You can find the link to order on our blendedblessedalwaysamess.com page. Mention code #blessed for an autographed copy. Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where this week, I think, is an incredible message of how God speaks to us in ways that we can never understand or explain. I mean, maybe we can understand. I mean, the message is pretty clear, but shocking ways when we are paying attention, God will speak to you. And sometimes when you're not even planning for it.
So I'm going to tell a story of something that happened to me, but I also want to kind of give a little bit of insight before the story. Just like we go through seasons ourselves as individuals, I think as parents, you also go through different seasons with your kids where there's times you feel incredibly connected to them. And then there's times where you feel like there's a distance. And for whatever reason, right, especially in the adolescent and teen years, I feel like that's more prevalent where they're trying to become their own person. So there tends to be that pushback. They're trying to figure out their lives, which is all like healthy in a lot of ways, because you also don't want them to try to figure that out later in life when they're completely on their own. So there's seasons as a parent, and to just be transparent, I'm kind of in this season right now with Chase a little bit, in that, you know, towards the end of the school year, there was a lot of pushing from me as the mom to him on just grades and school and all of that stuff. And he's also a 15-year-old boy who doesn't really want hugs, and mom asks too many questions. And he's also a very independent thinker, very headstrong, which...
Where does that come from?
I think it's great qualities to have. Except when you're trying to parent someone like that. Gosh, it's such a pain. Anyway,
I love being married to it. I love it.
Oh, you do not.
It's fantastic. I love it.
A liar.
You can see I'm this is a natural smile, and I love it.
You love the challenge is what you like.
It's a challenge.
As our therapist said, I'm a very unique person.
You're a very unique person.
I'm not
That's
your normal wife.
No.
But for me, this is incredibly more difficult for me as a mom, because I've already lost one child. And that might sound dramatic in some ways when you're like, hey, my kids are still here. My twins are still here. It's just that I would say, you know, it's possible to lose another. Like, you can't live in this world or this bubble thinking like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. That's like distant. Like, I'm not going to lose a kid, you know, until you're living in it. And there's a lot of ways you can lose a child outside of actually seeing your child take their last breath. You can lose a connection with your child. So that fear for me feels more in reach than something that could just happen. And then let's be real, when you have a divorced family, there's always that fear of like, oh, they're going to like one house over the other, or I'm not going to get all their moments with them. And so there's just this like loss that surrounds everything that makes it even harder on me.
No, I totally get it. And you say to me, like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose him.
Yes.
And that can just be relationally. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like lose him physically, but
And
relationally.
I know that I'm going to eventually. I just don't want it to happen sooner rather than later. Like sons go and they marry and they start building their own family versus your daughters. You tend to like have your little mini best friend there. And I don't know. It's all hard. And I think in our everyday life, just day to day, it's hard to restore or it's hard to connect at a deeper level unless you carve out time, you set time aside. It's no different than like our relationship, right? You have to date each other to keep that connection going. Same with our kids, especially in a big family.
100%.
Especially when you have your kids part-time. It's all just magnified and harder.
If you don't spend the time almost, and dating your children is not the right word, but intentionally spending the time with them, then yeah, you won't develop the relationship. Somebody else will do that, whether that's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a friend that you like or don't like. And you have to spend that time cultivating the relationship, just like anything, just like any garden, right? No garden flourishes without constant water and nurture and all of those things. And so, yeah, I mean, I totally get where you're at. I do feel like you and I try to do that with our kids, but it is difficult. Like you said, big family and a bunch of teenagers right now.
Yes.
And I would say even in the last several days, it's like, even since you got this message, it's been even like more like, really? Like, come on. For me, that's how I feel. Like, golly, can't win. But let's get into the thick of it.
One thing I want to do with Chase is he's not been to a big concert with an artist that he loves. He's been to concerts, but not like someone that's on his list to see. And so he loves Tyler Childers, which a lot of young kids do. And so, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, I looked to see where he was going to be and found out he was going to be in Chicago, which Chicago is like an hour flight from our little Columbia, Missouri airport. And so it's super easy for us. So booked it, just going to do one night in Chicago. And the night before the trip, I was nervous. Like I was actually upset, nervous.
I walked in the bedroom and what is wrong with you? Are you okay? Like what's happening? She was crying in bed.
I was because, and he would be embarrassed that I was telling this, but
he doesn't listen.
So I've been through so much and it rattles you. You unravel and you have to rebuild who you are. And so I'm pretty confident in being a mom, but let me tell you, when these kids get older, it gets harder and more complicated. And I struggle with Hallie of knowing what to do in my role as a mom in this incredibly gut-wrenching situation that she was in. So here I am, like unraveled and not confident sometimes in my parenting. I want it to be clear what my path forward should be and how I should handle it. And it's never clear. So I struggle with that. But I was also like nervous about going on that trip. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I nervous about spending time with my son? And if I unpack it, it's like, what if I'm not fun? Because let me tell you, the times I've laughed in the last 18 months, minimal. And I don't know how to have fun anymore. And it's also, I feel like I have to really mask my sadness for my kids because I also feel like we're the sad house in some ways. And so all of it, and it's like, I was praying, like, just help me take a deep breath and live and enjoy and laugh and be fun and reconnect with my son. So that's why I was teary-eyed.
And I walked in, I won't get this word for word right, but I remember just looking at you and telling you, you got to trust God. And one, you're the best mother I've ever been around. And that's just my own mother, my kids' moms. You're the best mother that I've ever been around. And your kids love you and they're connected to you. And as you've mentioned more than once, you grew them in your bellies. So you know them. And so you parent well, you communicate well. And so this was going to be a great opportunity for God to bless you and Chase and the time that you spent together. And you needed to relax and breathe, work on your breath, because breathing brings us back to God and brings us back to ourselves. And you went to sleep and then you got up and you guys left the butt crack.
And we had an early morning flight. The other thing I will say is as your kids grow up, like they literally, until they're a parent, they have no clue of what little gestures or moments like mean to their parents. And probably more specifically their mom. But we had an early morning flight, 6 a.m. flight, so we had to get up early. Chase was tired, and we're on this flight, and, he's almost 6 foot tall. And he all of a sudden, he just lays his head on my shoulder. And I'm like, oh my God, he does need me, even though I have the boniest shoulder ever.
I like being on your shoulder too. You have a nice shoulder.
It's like those moments of after you lose a child, especially, you crave that smallest little connection or even a touch from a kid. And so in that moment, I tried to pause all my thoughts and just take it all in. And there was several other moments like that it's just close your eyes and just remember what it's like to have your 15-year-old son try to get comfortable on your shoulder and fall asleep. And then there's even that one moment where, as your kid falls asleep and they lean their head forward when they're little, you're prop their head back up. I'm propping his head back up. Oh my God. So
it's too funny.
We go to the concert. We have a great day. I do have a funny story about someone taking our seats initially, but that's probably a later time. And during the concert, Eric had texted me and was like, hey, have you felt Hallie's presence? And I'm like, no, I really haven't lately. And that's probably for a multitude of reasons, but I just haven't. And I think part of it is you have to be open to it, right? But I have been so bogged down with a lot of parenting challenges that we're in and just the day to day that I haven't felt her presence. And, the next morning we had planned to go and explore along Lakeshore Drive. So in Chicago, there's this great bike trail that runs along Lake Michigan and also runs into the riverfront walks and all of that stuff. And we did this in New York and he loved it. And I love riding bikes. We do it in Florida all the time. So it's okay, that's something that we would really enjoy doing is to get those bikes. But first we need to eat. So hang with me because all these details matter.
It's very important that you get the deets.
Yes.
I think the kids say that, the deets.
Oh, sure. I can't keep up with their new words.
Honey, I'm younger than you. You're my cougar wife.
True.
So I try to stay hip.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we asked the concierge where we should go eat brunch because the day before they had a great recommendation. It was amazing. So they recommend this French place called Leah's. We walk there and we look at the menu. I have to have gluten-free now. And they had nothing that was gluten-free. Plus, Chase wasn't super excited about the menu. We're like, let's just go back to the place we went to the day before. So we walk there. Wild Berry is the name of it. And there's a bunch of people standing outside. We're like, what is going on? It must be a long wait. We get up there and they're like, we actually don't have power. And we're literally cooking with one burner and hand washing dishes. So we can only handle the people that are here right now. Like, shoot. Okay. Regroup. We go find another spot we walk to that we knew was just mid, but at this point we're hungry. We're starving. And so we go there, we order our food, we get our water.
Was it like a chain? Is that how you knew it was mid?
No, because the concierge told us it was mid.
Okay. Which mid is something the kids say.
Yes.
Look at you.
Average. It was average. Our food was decent, but the water was terrible. Chase took the first drink and he was like, oh my God, this water is terrible. And I think, oh, it's fine. Oh no, it was bad. It did not taste good. So
that water's expired. It's because you can't expire water. That was funny. Okay.
Yes.
See, she laughs sometimes. You just got to be real silly.
Yeah. So we finished eating and Chase is like, I'm still hungry. And I'm like, we probably need to buy some bottled water because at this point we've had brunch and no water. So right next to the place was a donut place, Stan's Donuts. So we walk in there, Chase picks out 2 donuts. They actually had a gluten-free donut. So I'm like, ooh, I think I'll have one of those and treat myself because I can't remember the last time I had a donut, like years. So we have 3 donuts. The lady was like, you might as well just make it like a box and get 6. Sure. Chase loves sugar. Fine. Add a couple more in there.
What could go wrong?
Water. Yeah. So we sit there. He eats 2 donuts. I eat my gluten-free donut and they give us like a clear bag to put our donuts in. So I'm like, this is great because it'll work great for our bike to carry our stuff with us. So we have a clear bag, we have our bottled water, and we have 3 donuts in it. And we go start our walk towards this lakefront or Lakeshore Drive. Well, you can't get to it directly from where we're walking. You have to kind of go through a park and down this underneath this overpass to get to it. So we're walking through this park and we walk past this bench that had a man, a homeless man, black homeless man, sitting there on the edge of the bench. And he didn't have a shirt on. And he had kind of like, I don't know what it was. I didn't pay much attention to this, but like maybe a small blanket or something that he was covering his legs. And as we walk past him, I look at him. I usually look at homeless people. Like sometimes people don't make eye contact with them. I notice homeless people. And I think part of it is I can empathize with them a little bit of like, I wonder what their story is. I wonder how they got here. They're not like scary to me. I wonder about them. And whether people think they're a scam or not, like that's a whole nother thing. Regardless if they're trying to scam people, they're still in a tough spot somehow, right? So anyway, he said he stopped us as we were walking past and he's like, ma'am, he said they took my pants. And then I noticed that he had like just underwear on and he was trying to cover himself up. And he said, I have no water. Is there any way that you could give me your water? And I just looked at Chase like, we should probably give him the donuts, don't you think? And he's like, yes, without even thinking twice. I was going to give him the donuts anyway. But I want my kids to be involved in decision making like that. So I hand it to him and I said, yeah, just take this whole bag. And he was like, are you sure? And I said, yes. And we started to walk off. And he said, hang on, I have a message for you. And I'm like, okay. And he said, God is in control.
Chills.
And he said, is that your son? And I said, yes. And he said, keep showing him the acts of kindness and it will be okay. And I just looked at him. I'm like, I believe in that message too, that God's in control. And we walk away and I'm like, literally, it's 90 degrees and I am ice cold, thinking like, what just happened here? Like, did I just talk to Jesus? Because that's literally what it felt like. I felt like I was being tested is the wrong word, but like, are you can
it's like
you
the
feel
stories
compassionate for another person? And then why that message? Like I say that and remind myself of that every damn day when I'm struggling. God's in control. I'm not in control. He is. And here's a man who has nothing sitting in his underwear telling me, who's fortunate enough to take my son on a fun little getaway trip, to say God's in control.
It's biblically, it's like the stories, the parables Jesus would tell, where he would say, when you did the least for that, when you did those things for the least of my brothers and sisters, is when you were feeding me, when you were clothing me, when you were doing those things, that's when you're living out the will of God. And so for you guys to do that, and I asked you too, like, did he seem like he was off, like he was on anything? You're like, no, this man seemed like just he was just down on his luck, clear of mind, like he wasn't like out of it in any way, shape, or form. And so that message,
homeless. I mean, he was definitely homeless, but sometimes you cross paths with people that are also mentally, really have stuff going on. But you just think about like all the things that had to happen in order to put all that into play. Like you can't even process how many different decisions that were made. If we would have been at brunch at that Wildberry place, we would not have had food and water in a bag. If they wouldn't have given me a clear bag, he wouldn't have saw that I had bottled water in there because that's all he wanted. I mean, it's just kind of insane. If Chase wasn't still hungry, we wouldn't have stopped to get donuts. It just, all the things to just remind us that God is the only one that's in control.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And then we go to church on Sunday, and
Father's
the whole
Day
message is another parable around the righteousness versus the tax collector and how the humble will be exalted.
Story of my life is working on humility,
kids will humble us real quick.
I'm telling you, when I've been reminding myself ever since you came back, like God is in control, right? And yesterday, I mean, just be real transparent, because Lexi's the only one that listens to this podcast. I mean, probably my least favorite Father's Day
right now.
I mean, just least favorite Father's Day. And it didn't start that way. Like I woke up to you and I said, "Man, this is weird. It's like first Father's Day that none of my kids have been in my home when I woke up since Lexi was born." And she's 21. She's graduated college. She's off on her own. Carter was playing in a baseball tournament 2 hours away. I had seen Dane the day before and I was going to see him again yesterday afternoon on Father's Day because I was helping coach his baseball team, but he was at his mom. So that was just weird. And then as the day went on, it just didn't go very well with kids. Didn't seem. And that's humbling, right? When you feel like you put all this work into the kids and it's Father's Day and nobody seems to really care that it's Father's Day. And so I'm having to go back and listen to the podcast that I did with David last week and go give these kids grace. Their brains aren't fully developed till they're 27. They're teenagers. They really don't give a shit about you, unfortunately. I mean, that's just, if you have teenagers, some of you are going, oh my God, I totally relate with that. These kids, they just don't care, right? And as a parent, that hurts because I want to spend the time with my kids. And it just didn't work out that way. So it was very humbling, right? Coming off of the sermon and also then coming off of the message that you had gotten just a couple of days before, like God is in control. And even though I think sometimes I'm really getting that message, I find out on days like yesterday that I'm really struggling with it. I'm still not great at going, yeah, okay, this day's not what I want it to be, but you're in control. I have to trust that your process is better than mine. And yeah, sometimes I speak the truths better than I believe the truths. Would you say that you?
I think that's fair for everybody. I think it's fair for everybody.
Fake it till you make it in some regard.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think there's moments where it all connects and you believe it all. And then whenever there's struggling times, it all gets thrown out the window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going back to the parable that they shared in the sermon. And one of the things that he had shared was talking about the righteous. If you feel like you could, how was it? Like if you show
like
up.
If you're keeping score, he's talking about keeping score. If you're keeping a different kind of scorecard than the one that God is keeping, pretty much.
Right. And so like if you feel like you're going to show up at the pearly gates
I did
and
this,
you think someone else doesn't need to be there, you've got issues. You're not keeping the right scorecard. I'm like, oh God, like that is hard for, I think, a lot of us, but I would say for me to think that, I could pick certain people and be like, I better be at the front of the line than that person.
If that's the case, I'm guilty too. I told you yesterday, we talked about it after church and you shared that with me, and I appreciate your vulnerability and us having that kind of relationship. And I agree. I have the same thing. I think most people, if they're honest or listening, they're going, I should get in over that person. Mm-hmm. Most people. Yeah. And I feel like I'm not that way about a lot of people, but there's some people that we all have in life that we're like, that person really burns my backside. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think that's a natural reaction, but that was the message, is humbling yourself and let God decide, because God is in control. The
interesting thing is, like, my mission with Chase was to connect with him in his heart, just like you and David talked about last week. But then you flip it and it's like God tries to connect with us and our hearts. And in turn, we're also supposed to connect with other people, just not our kids, not only them, but I think in life we are given so many opportunities to try to connect with other people, connect with their hearts, but we are all trying to control everything. Just like the homeless man said, like, keep doing the acts of kindness. Don't harden your heart. Keep trying to connect with other people's hearts and it will be okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And as I said to you driving home last night, sometimes I think God makes us parents and gives us kids so that it could be a reminder to us of how much we rebel against him. Mm-hmm. I mean, every time we're like, gosh, my kids are rebelling, God's like, yeah, I'm aware. I know the feeling.
This is what it feels like.
All the time. And so that was a reminder. But it is when we are more outward focused on other people, which a lot of times is not our natural instinct. But when we tend to curve in on ourselves, then we end up being less happy. Like we try to control more. We find less happiness when we're more outward focused. So we curve outwards. We give into others. We're more kind to others. We give more of ourselves in those relationships. And we find happiness there. We find ourselves making better choices. We find ourselves lifting others up. And so that's the task, and easier said than done, right? Again, sometimes I can speak it better than I can do it. So
No, I totally get that. We're supposed to connect with each other's hearts, other humans, but I also try to connect with my horse's heart.
Your horsey.
My horsey. And so Saturday afternoon, I had a little bit of downtime, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time with my dad for Father's Day, but I need to also stop and spend a little bit of time with Phoenix. And it was really hard. It was really hard to go out there because she was like so sweet. And the barn was quiet, and I was able to like just cry with this big animal. And there's a moment where I just like laid my head on her head, and she just like, it was like she froze and just stood there for a long time. I ended up snapping a picture of it because of just how she was so still and I felt so connected to her and so connected to Hallie in those moments. And I just think that there's more to learn about horses and their ability to connect with humans. And I actually want to do a podcast episode just on that with the horse barn owner. Her and I've been chatting about that, of like sharing like what are the things that most people don't know about horses and how do they really connect. But it got me definitely thinking about just writing about that emotion. And I did share it on social media today, but I also wanted to just read it on here because I think we have a lot of listeners that probably maybe aren't on our social media as well, because our reach is getting extensive. So, which is awesome. I think we're in like 3,500 cities now.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Definitely more people that knows Hallie's name.
Well, I love this poem. I'm excited for you to read it and share it with everybody. You are such a beautiful writer, and the way that you walk this walk with such grit and grace that no parent wants to walk. And I think that this poem really shares that.
The place I go to feel my child is a quiet horse barn. Isn't that so wild? Hallie used to say she loved the smell. I have never understood that very well. That is, until now. Phoenix is Hallie's dream foal. Horses were a deep part of her soul. I never thought I would need to understand that connection her heart would demand. That is, until now. Bumps and bruises Hallie always had. Injuries were mostly minor. Some could have been bad. I've seen their spicy side so clear. That's why horses bring me so much fear. That is, until now. When all you're left with is pictures of her, then a constant connection search occurs. Knowing my heart will never heal. Heartbreaking emptiness without even a piece of her is my new real. That is, until now. Because of Phoenix, because of me trying to learn this like soul connection, this heart connection with a horse.
That's beautiful. And the picture that you shared on social is just so cool. When you sent it to me a few days ago, I was like, that's just an amazing picture. It's so...
Well, it sums it up. It's like you just crave such a piece of your child, anything. Like give me anything that is a piece of her. So cool. I can hold on to it. And wouldn't you know, like Hallie or God both, orchestrate this thing that she loved for me to hold on to.
So cool. I'm proud of you. Proud of you for doing it. And the poem, again, is amazing. And the message for today from a homeless man that for all we know is Jesus, right? Saying God is in control. Keep showing your son kindness. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's how God works. So it's why we believe and how we get through every day. So in the meantime, our kids will continue to do what kids do, and we'll trust God. That's all we can do. And hopefully that if you're struggling with some of that, you'll take some solace in that as well. Ange, I don't think we have anything else for today, but just know that I love listening to you tell stories because you get it. Like you get what people are needing and you're able to convey that message to them. So
it's because it's what I need. I only share what I need to hear.
And yet other people need to hear it as well. So I love you, honey. Good job.
Love you too. Choose you.
Oh, man. Look at her. Thank you. Choose you. We hope you guys have a wonderful week. And again, if you like anything you heard today, feel free to share that with friends, family, or whomever. You can text the podcast to them. You can share it on your socials. We'd appreciate that. But otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful week and God bless.
Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.